Hello, everyone. I hope you're ready for some more C programming today, because that's what we're doing. So, we are already in our handy dandy coding folder, and if we look inside it, we are going to tackle for loops today, and we already have a for.c, so we're going to go ahead and clear that out with the same echo command I always use. Echo nothing into for.c. And open it up with Nano. Alright, first things first, we are going to include standard.io.h because we are, of course, going to be using printf again. And main is always going to return an integer, and it's always going to take an integer called argc, and, ooh, don't need the word and in there, haha, a character vector called argv. And the syntax of the for loop is actually a bit more complicated than a lot of things. Not crazy complicated, but definitely easy to forget. I'm going to use the word for, and we have an initialization step where we are going to almost always initialize some variable, but you do actually get quite a bit of freedom here. We are going to have a conditional to test to determine when the loop ends, or rather when it continues, and we're going to have some sort of update statement. And usually the form this takes is we are going to have some kind of integer called I. If you aren't working in ANSI compliant C, you can actually define, is that the correct word? You can declare and define the variable right inside the for loop, but ANSI compliant C does not like that. So we're going to have some integer called I. We're going to set it equal to 0 right away. We're going to check for I being less than something. This usually gets used to iterate through arrays. Maybe usually isn't the right term. Often. Less than, let's just call it loop stop. And we're going to have an update statement, which is going to be incrementing the variable. Again, usually, this offers you an immense amount of freedom. You can do some weird things up in here. And if you're going to execute more than one statement in your loop, you need the braces. If you're not, you don't. I almost forgot. We got to return 0 because main returns an integer. Now, loop stop. One way to do it is to declare a constant variable, which I'm actually blanking on the syntax for at the moment. I think it's something just like const int loop stop equals 3 is a fine number. Or you can't do both of these, but you can certainly do either one. You can define a macro up in the preprocessor. Would this be considered a macro? Not sure. But you can define it up here, and this will actually go through and edit your code before the compiler sees it. This is a pre-compiler directive. So it can be more efficient in some ways, and that's what we're going to do today. And we will use our favorite command, printf, from standard.io. Ooh, gotta have your closing quote mark on there. That won't work. Have looped party har har. %d is for integers. Got to use the exclamation point because it is the funniest of all punctuation marks. And when you're doing something like this with the %d, all of these things will go in order as additional arguments after your static string here. I guess you could call it a format string. I believe that's what the F stands for in printf. And the variable we want is just India. And that should give us some basic functionality. Compile it again with GCC, of course ANSI compliance. Ooh, output file is going to be 4.0, input file will be 4.c, and away we go. Hey, no errors. Alright, and as you can see, it, let's pull the code back up to talk about this. This initialization step here happens before the first iteration of the loop. This check here happens at the top of each iteration of the loop, so once it gets to 2, it'll break on the next one and not work. And this update step here is at the bottom of each iteration of the loop, so as you'll notice, we did actually get a 0 in there. Quite handy. You can do other fun things, like, say, nest these. And to do that, we'll want another variable. You can declare and define multiple variables on the same line. I don't believe you can initialize them. Good question. Something to ponder about later. And we will go j equals 0. I usually crunch these down just to save space. It's all about readability versus how much space you're taking up on the line. It doesn't really matter. J is less than I. And J++. And this is a really common coding exercise you'll see a lot. Printf. It is called a staircase for those of you that are interested. And because we only had one line in here, we didn't need the braces. And if we don't have a new line, things start looking funky, so we'll add one in there. And that looks like that should work. We'll make loop stop a little bigger just so you can see some of the fireworks. Compile it with our regular GCC line. And execute. And as you can see, we got our little staircase. Loop stop was 5, so we went from 0 to 4. You can get it to work a little differently if you use the less than or equals to test, but usually you will just want a less than. And that is about it for the basics of for loops. I think I'll make another video where we get really wacky up in here. Just to show you I'm not kidding, you can actually leave that empty, and this would be a good time to check and see if you can do that. I have a feeling this won't compile. Oh! Oh! I did not expect that. Yeah. So as you can see, we initialized our variable up here, and then we just didn't have to do it here, and you can just leave that bit blank. That will do it for the basics of for loops for today. I hope you all learned something, and have a great day.